کنفرانس بین المللی در پاریس با حضور رئیس جمهور برگزیده مقاومت، اسطوره اشرف، خاورمیانه در بحران، تهدیدها و راه حل‌ها. 10 شهریور 1393، اول سپتامبر 2014. گرامی داشت 52 قهرمان شهید اشرفی در نخستین سالگرد حماسه مقاومت در برابر جنایت علیه بشریت در حمله 10 شهریور 92 به اشرف.
Madam Rajvi, distinguished guests all, both on the podium and in the audience, I have been privileged to serve my country, the United States of America, in many, many capacities over my lifetime. The country that I love, the country that I cherish, made promises to the men and women at Ashraf and Liberty, and for a decade has ignored those promises. I'm with you yesterday, today, and tomorrow until my country keeps its promise. As we all know, the fight for human progress, the fight for freedom, for justice, for life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, is not without struggle, it's not without sacrifice, it's not without death, without pain. And we assemble today to acknowledge the martyrdom of 52 men and women. Let's not forget the 7 hostages that were still unaccounted for. 7 individuals are kidnapped, but at the same time, we honor those over 100,000 men and women who have been imprisoned and tortured and killed by the mullahs. And we honor those who continue to fight with their very presence at liberty for the cause of a free Iran. From time to time at gatherings like this, I suppose that some of you in your hearts feel disappointed or frustrated. But we don't have the luxury of feeling those kinds of emotions. We must take our inspiration from the men and women at liberty who have refused to bow to terror, refused to bow to the path of least resistance. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but Rouhani the other day suggested that the United States of America, my country, is responsible for ISIS. This is the same individual who said and bragged publicly, I have kept the Western governments talking, but we can build more centrifuges. This is the leader, along with Khomeini, who have killed Americans in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is a leader who has supported Assad. And so let me say to my president, and he is my president, and I respect the office. But he said the other day he has no strategy to deal with that region. Well, I'll give you a couple of ideas, Mr. President. The first thing you need to do is keep the promises you made to the people of MEK. And you never, ever make a pact with the devil. We can get involved in that region, but we cannot do so in concert, collaboration, or cooperation with the mullahs in Iran. No Iran. It is the central bank for terrorism. It is probably at the heart of the problem in the entire region. It cannot possibly be part of the solution. The recommendation I have for the new leader, if he ever takes charge, if Maliki finally moves into the sunset and perhaps on his way to the international court to be tried for the repression of the Sunnis and the Kurds and the tribal chiefs, to Al-Badi, I suggest to you, if you want to demonstrate new leadership, independent leadership, you break the stranglehold on Camp Liberty. You allow the food and the energy to move without restriction forevermore. And more importantly, I say to Abadi, if you truly believe and you need American support, and you do, and we need to use the leverage. We have pilots in the skies. We have boots on the ground. We spent $1 trillion. We lost 4,000 people. You leave Iraq for Iraqis, get Iran out of there, and at the same time, you must go to the UN and say, we will accept Liberty as a refugee camp and all the protection accorded with it. Demonstrate your leadership. Liberty must be a refugee camp. Ladies and gentlemen, you hear from quite a few Americans at these different events and will continue to be with you, but you should know that not only is our support of you public, but on a regular basis we interact with our government. Mr. President, your administration made promises. Mr. President, it's your responsibility to keep them. Ladies and gentlemen, at a memorial service yesterday in Washington, D.C., a young man spoke eloquently, as some of these other family members did, of his father who died as a martyr in اشرف. And the conclusion of his very powerful remarks, talking about his dad, his father, his loved one, someone he cherished. He reminded all of us in attendance, and although you need not remind it, I think I will repeat his words to you. We are all liberty. We are all Ashraf. We are all one.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Rajvi, distinguished guests, one and all, members of the dais, ladies and gentlemen, and especially those that are watching today from Camp Liberty, Salam Alaikum. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here today and join you in honoring and commemorating those 52 who were killed at Camp Ashraf in a massacre, and remind all that their sacrifice was not in vain. They are true patriots, true heroes, true heroines, and they provided an example for all of us in the room today and those watching to follow. However, I must admit it is also painful for me and others. You just heard from Secretary Ridge that the whole U.S. delegation, as we witnessed the ineptness of the President Obama's administration and our feckless and cowardly State Department in dealing with Camp Ashraf and now the ongoing crisis, humanitarian crisis developing at Camp Liberty. It is astonishing to me to see the action that the United States just took to protect a small religious sect in Iraq, while 3,000 Iranians that were promised protection by the United States and whose safety was supposed to be guaranteed continue to face imminent disaster at Camp Liberty. That is just not right. What about the U.S. promise to protect the residents? Why is the ambassador and his team even afraid to visit? It's been almost 5 months since the U.S. ambassador visited the camp. That is shabby even compared to the one visit just recently made by the UN delegation in the last 2.5 months. Why is it that they're not going out to Camp Liberty? Is it because they're afraid to witness the appalling conditions that those in Camp Liberty are having to endure? Is it because they don't want to see what the Iraqis are imposing upon them, like fuel sieges, being denied the right to remove sewage, the opportunity to attend a funeral, or the fact that the food and medical supplies are being denied? All of those were promised by Secretary Clinton and Ambassador Dan Fried, which were part of President Obama's administration. So we need to hold President Obama personally responsible for this lack of activity that's taking place at Camp Liberty. I cannot even imagine a cowardly U.S. ambassador hiding behind the walls of his embassy while 3,000 residents at Camp Liberty have to fend for themselves. Again, it's just not right. Between President Obama's lack of leadership and the U.S. Embassy's lack of anything in Iraq, it's almost enough to make you ill. However, it appears now that the Obama administration has recognized what many of us have been telling him and his administration for months, if not years, that Maliki was an Iranian regime puppet. And now that this has been proven true and we've witnessed him depart under less than favorable conditions, he has left Iraq in a shambles. And now we are facing, and Iraq is facing, the entire Middle East facing an even greater crisis from ISIS. We all welcome the arrival of the new Prime Minister, al-Abadi, in Iraq. However, it's now time to see if he's going to continue in the footsteps of Maliki or if he's going to recognize the humanitarian crisis that's ongoing at Camp Liberty and step forward and provide leadership. I think, as Secretary Ridge said, it is absolutely disgraceful that the United States has asked the MEK to renounce their membership in order to enter into the United States. That is a flawed policy, and the MEK should not tolerate such a disgraceful policy by the Obama administration. You can rest assured that those of us here today will stand by that to the last man, and we speak for those other 30 or so prominent individuals in America that will speak on behalf of the MEK. So what should the Obama administration do? Let me cover that very briefly. First and foremost, Mr. President, you need to acknowledge that we guaranteed the safety of the MEK and start acting like it. And we need to say that an attack on the residents of Camp Liberty now constitutes an attack on America itself. Secondly, declare Camp Liberty a protected zone. Insert a special operations team. They're not afraid to go to Camp Liberty. Insert a special ops team out there to provide whatever is needed, including air power, to protect the residents of Camp Liberty. And at the same time, it sends a strong signal that Camp Liberty is a protected area. Third, quit cooperating with an Iranian government who has killed our soldiers in Iraq under the pretext of fighting for terrorism. The real terrorists are in Tehran, and the solution is to hold the Iranian mullahs responsible and accountable. The incumbent Iranian regime is not part of any solution. It is the problem, not only in Iraq, but throughout the Middle East. Quit accepting their meddling in Iraq, let alone their cooperation with it. We need to say that those are a red line. No cooperation, no coordination, and no sharing of information with Iran. That constitutes a red line that must not be crossed. Any attempt to cooperate in any way with Iran is betraying these 52 individuals at Camp Ashraf, in addition to the hundreds and thousands of soldiers that were killed in Iraq trying to carry out the mission that President Obama and President Bush set them on. Fourth, it is almost an imperative to regain the trust and cooperation of the Sunnis, and the Obama administration needs to use the air power that we are currently using against ISIS to assist the Sunnis and the Iraqi tribes, without whose support the ISIS will not be repealed. Fifth, they need to help regain the trust of the Iranian tribes and the Sunnis. In order to do that, the Shia militia groups that are fighting in Iraq today must be disbanded. Basically, the Shia militia groups are similar to the ISIS, and they must be dealt with in the same manner. And finally, President Obama, your administration needs to wake up and look at whose strategic goals in Iraq and throughout the region best align with the goals of the United States and the rest of Europe. And if you do that, you will see that unquestionably the Iranian regime must be gone. They must be displaced. They must be taken out. If you want to be on the side of victory, you must align yourself with the MEK. The mullahs see the alignment of Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point program with the democratic systems of Europe and the United States, which is one reason why they are so fearful of the MEK. Making their fears come true should be the goal of the Obama administration. And this is the greatest thing that we could do to honor the U.S. soldiers who fought and died in Iraq, and simultaneously honor the memory of those brave souls who were massacred in Camp Ashraf. Mercy and all the best. Thank you.
Mrs. Rajavi, honored guests, my fellow Ashrafis. On this day a year ago, 52 residents of Camp Ashraf, who had remained behind to safeguard property of MEK as they had been guaranteed the right to do, those people were murdered in cold blood by a unit of the Iraqi military. The people who carried out this massacre showed all the signs of a military force. They wore identical uniforms, even identical soft white caps, so that they could be recognized by one another. The weapons they used were of United States manufacture. The white soft caps that they wore showed that they had no fear of being attacked by the people they were massacring. They didn't even have to wear helmets. This attack came years after the United States military had promised in writing, following the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, that if members of MEK surrendered their weapons, they would be treated as protected persons under the Geneva Conventions. When the United States withdrew from Iraq in 2011, the government purported to transfer this responsibility to the Iraqi government, even as the United States cites international law permitting the transfer of responsibility to a government in control. It disregards that part of international law that says that if the transfer is to a power that either cannot or will not follow through, that does not relieve the maker of the promise of its responsibility for keeping it. And the maker of that promise was the United States. And we cannot sit by and wait for others to act. One thing we have to do is to keep insisting that the U.S. government airlift the residents out and place them at least temporarily in a location outside Iraq in the United States if necessary. Second, as General Shelton said, we must resist the idea that in order to defeat ISIS, the United States should cooperate with Iran, whether implicitly or explicitly. Iran and ISIS are two sides of the same coin. We must keep account of the new Iraqi government and make it clear to al-Abadi that he will be judged by how he treats the residents of Liberty and Ashraf. As Mrs. Rajavi and others have said, there is no substitute for regime change in Iran. That is the only way out of this conundrum. That is the only honorable way out of this conundrum. And as long as you and we continue to raise our voices, that way will be found. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I will, like most of you, never forget the morning of September 1st, 2013. I was down at our beach house overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, and I was sitting on the porch when a phone call came through to me. It was a beautiful day, much like September 11, 2001 was a beautiful day in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And I couldn't believe what had happened. I couldn't believe that people were tied and bound and shot and executed in cold blood. I thought, for some reason, I thought about the Alamo. In the Alamo, Texas was hoping to gain its freedom from Mexico, and a little more than 200 Texans, poorly armed, held out in this little fort for days against 10,000 members of Santa Anna's army. Eventually, all of the people in the Alamo, all of these revolutionaries were killed. But it wasn't long before Santa Anna's army was defeated and before Texas became a free part of the United States of America. And I believe with all my heart that that's what will happen as an outgrowth of what happened on September 1st, 2013. And as I listened to the reports, as we got more and more information, I felt grief and anger. Anger because our country had caused this by failing to live up to the promises we made, by failing to do what America had always done in the past, and that was be the protector of people who were fighting for liberty and freedom and decency. We had made an explicit promise, and we failed to live up to that promise. We failed to live up to it 6 times. This was the 6th attack in which members of the original Camp Ashraf were killed. We did nothing other than protest in the first 5. We called for an independent investigation, but there never was an independent investigation, and we never forced there to be. We actually sat in a room with Martin Kobler and negotiated an agreement, a memorandum of understanding about what the conditions would be in Ashraf. And Ashraf was going to be a temporary transit facility. A temporary transit facility. Let the record show that not one of those promises has been kept. Not one promise about the conditions at Ashraf, not one promise about the temporary transit facility, not one single promise has been kept. And Governor Ridge read you part of the letter that we all wrote and signed. It was our second letter to President Obama. And I suggested to the group that we send the same letter to the president every week until something's done. The United States has failed. As proud as I am of being an American, when I listen to General Shelton and Governor Ridge and General Mukasey and the others and Senator Torselli, as proud as I am that we have fought like the Dickens to try to get this done, I'm ashamed of what our government has failed to do. Well, it's time for us all to act. It's time for the world community to act. It's time for the UN to act. It's time for the U.S. to act. In the name of decency, let's honor our commitment.
Thank you. Madam Rajvi, so good to see you. To all the family members whose loved ones are on this wall, my condolences go out to you on this first year anniversary of their brutal murder. My heart goes out to you. They not only died to protect their brothers and sisters in اشرف, they died for their brothers and sisters to have a free Iran. They died for their brothers and sisters throughout the Middle East who are being brutalized because of the long hand of the mullahs in Tehran who support Assad, whose barbaric atrocities continue to claim the lives of innocent Syrians. They died for all of those who are brutalized because of Iran's puppet regime in Iraq and Lebanon and throughout the Middle East. And they also died for all of us all over the world who do not want this cauldron of instability and turmoil that is spreading throughout the Middle East to be added to with a nuclear weapon. So they died not only for their own and for the Iranian people, they died for all free people who do not want to be terrorized by having the leading state sponsor of terrorism possessing a nuclear weapon. But instead of protecting the people the United States swore to protect, the United States turned its back on the residents of Ashraf and now Liberty. Instead of standing with the people of Syria against Assad, the United States turned its back on protecting them from the barbarism of Assad, supported by the mullahs in Tehran. Can you imagine where we would be today if the United States had not let up on the crippling effects of those sanctions? Can you imagine where we would be today if the United States did not say to the mullahs, we'll give you a breather, we'll let you regroup, we'll let you come back so you can continue to sponsor Assad, so you can continue to sponsor Maliki, so you can continue to terrorize your own people? So what we need to do today is we need the force of law to make the United States do what it promised to do, to make the United Nations do what it promised to do, and that's to protect not only liberty, but to protect the people who are being persecuted by the tyrannical mullahs, not only in Iran, but in Iraq and Syria and everywhere else where the long arm of the mullahs reaches. My friends, Senator Torricelli said we are all Ashrafis. I say it in Farsi. Man Irani hastam, man Ashrafi hastam.
À nos amis syriens, je voudrais dire que votre guerre est longue, trop longue, mais que le sens de l'histoire est avec vous, car vous êtes une force de libération. Comme d'autres, vous êtes les victimes de Bachar al-Assad, mais aussi d'un jeu diplomatique international qui est au-dessus de vos têtes. Et en ce moment, les frontières de tout le Moyen-Orient sont en train de changer pour la première fois depuis les années 20. Dans cette nouvelle géographie en cours, la communauté internationale fait un pari insensé, celui de faire de l'Iran le gendarme de la région. Mais les premières victimes de cette situation nouvelle et dangereuse en cours, ce ne seront pas seulement les minorités établies dans ces régions, mais ce sera la paix mondiale et la sécurité de la planète. C'est un enjeu stratégique majeur qui se passe dans le silence international, mais dans la souffrance des peuples qui subissent cela, que ce soit en Syrie, que ce soit en Iran, que ce soit en Irak, que ce soit dans les territoires palestiniens et dans tant d'autres endroits. Nous sommes aujourd'hui réunis en mémoire du premier anniversaire du massacre d'Ashraf qui avait eu lieu le 1er septembre 2013. On l'a dit, cette attaque sanglante a fait 52 morts et a conduit à la prise de 7 otages. Mes premières pensées vont donc à leurs familles dont je n'ose imaginer le chagrin. On connaît les auteurs de ces massacres, ce sont des forces spéciales liées à l'ancien Premier ministre Maliki. C'est la preuve que la communauté internationale n'a pas été en capacité de protéger le camp Liberté. C'est la preuve aussi que cette sécurisation du camp n'est pas une option, mais une obligation, parce que ces personnes ont le statut, et pour ceux qui sont décédés avaient le statut de personnes protégées sous le régime de la Convention de Genève. Et le gouvernement américain s'y était engagé à les protéger après l'invasion de l'Irak. Et rappeler les obligations des Nations Unies pour prévenir de tels crimes, car il n'y a pas de doute, les victimes d'Ashraf ont été assassinées pour des raisons politiques. Il y a une volonté d'éliminer ceux qui incarnent l'opposition au régime, ceux qui sont une alternative politique et démocratique. Et cette alternative, nous devons la soutenir, car le fondamentalisme n'a pas d'avenir. Il est essentiel de s'engager auprès d'Ashraf et de Liberté pour la sécurité et la paix mondiale. Et pour y arriver, il est urgent de plaider auprès des Nations Unies et des États-Unis pour qu'ils respectent leurs obligations issues des conventions de Genève. Il est également fondamental de mettre le gouvernement irakien devant ses responsabilités. Maliki n'est plus Premier ministre, mais il y a un nouveau gouvernement. Et ce nouveau gouvernement irakien doit prendre ses responsabilités, pas seulement face aux minorités chrétiennes, yazidis, mais également par rapport au camp Liberté. Enfin, la priorité, Madame la Présidente, vous l'avez dit, c'est la sécurisation du camp. Il faut sécuriser ce camp de manière très concrète, en y installant des casques bleus des Nations Unies qui puissent protéger ces populations face à l'incapacité du régime irakien à assurer leur sécurité. Et ces demandes ne sont absolument pas excessives. Elles sont légitimes, elles sont humaines, elles sont justes. Les Nations Unies doivent les entendre. Madame la Présidente, sachez que dans vos justes efforts, nous sommes nombreux et déterminés à votre côté c'est notre responsabilité morale.
Madame la Présidente, Pierre Mendès France, qui fut un grand homme d'État français, a dit un jour que gouverner, c'est choisir. Gouverner, c'est choisir. Gouverner, c'est poser la hiérarchie des priorités. On ne gouverne pas si on met toutes les affaires sur le même plan. Et il faut hiérarchiser les priorités, que nous ayons des bénéfices à attendre, de mesures à prendre, ou que nous ayons des dangers à conjurer. Les États-Unis sont confrontés au choix entre le terrorisme ou l'accès de l'Iran au nucléaire militaire. Il faut dire clairement ici que le terrorisme est un épiphénomène. Le terrorisme n'a jamais déstabilisé un seul État. Certes, il est redoutable, il a parfois des conséquences bouleversantes, dramatiques, mais jamais le terrorisme n'a renversé un seul État. Par conséquent, concentrer tous ces efforts sur le terrorisme, certes, mais au prix de concessions faites sur le dossier majeur qu'est l'accès de l'Iran au nucléaire militaire, serait une lourde erreur. Ce serait l'erreur la plus lourde que les États-Unis, pardonnez-moi, mais Dieu sait s'ils en ont fait, nous aussi d'ailleurs, que les États-Unis pourraient aujourd'hui commettre. En effet, l'accès de l'Iran, qui deviendrait la 9e puissance nucléaire du monde, aurait au moins deux conséquences. Elle bouleverserait les équilibres stratégiques de tout le Moyen-Orient, avec des conséquences incalculables. Et puis, elle aurait aussi un autre effet, c'est que cette 9e puissance nucléaire ne resterait probablement pas la dernière, car un certain nombre d'autres États, et en particulier les États arabes, comme l'Égypte, comme l'Arabie saoudite, pourraient légitimement revendiquer l'accès eux aussi au nucléaire militaire. Ce serait donc en quelque sorte une reprise à la course aux armements nucléaires, ce qui, dans le contexte politique et géopolitique actuel, serait une véritable catastrophe. Je pense qu'il fallait le faire passer. Je pense qu'il faut bien marteler que l'objectif premier, l'objectif essentiel, c'est d'empêcher l'Iran d'arriver à la possession de l'arme nucléaire. Le régime iranien s'est appuyé sur un régime fantoche, le régime irakien de M. Maliki. M. Maliki que les Américains ont tout de même mis au pouvoir. Lorsque les Américains sont arrivés en Irak, à l'issue de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, de la Deuxième Guerre du Golfe, ils ont mis en quelque sorte une sorte de condominium en place. Il y avait évidemment le gouvernement influencé par les États-Unis, mais il y avait aussi l'entrée massive en Irak de gens de la force Quds, de gens des services du VEVAC, les services de renseignement iraniens, et l'Iran, en quelque sorte, a mis la main sur l'Irak. Projetons-nous un tout petit peu dans l'avenir et examinons ensemble, si vous voulez, tous les bénéfices que la communauté internationale, et d'abord l'Irak, et ensuite les gens de l'armée syrienne libre, retirés de la mise à l'écart de M. Maliki. Ce serait évidemment un coup fatal porté non seulement à l'Irak, mais au régime iranien. Ce régime iranien qui, encore une fois, doit être aujourd'hui mis en demeure de cesser ses attaques et en particulier de cesser ses attaques contre le camp de Liberty. ces femmes et ces hommes qui, non pas chaque jour, mais chaque heure et chaque minute, éprouvent les affres de la détention, nous donnent une telle leçon de courage et de dignité que nous serions bien inspirés de nous en inspirer. Et je citerai là aussi pour terminer une phrase d'un autre grand homme qui fut le général de Gaulle et qui dit exactement ceci: l'avenir dure longtemps et tout peut arriver, y compris qu'un acte conforme à l'honneur et à l'honnêteté s'avère en définitive un bon placement politique. Merci.
Bismillah, salatu salam ala rasulillah. Madame la Présidente, notre sœur Meriem Rejouy, notre sœur à tous, les amoureux de la liberté. Nous sommes ici et au moment où je commence la parole et après les images que nous avons vues, il y a un double effet. Le premier, c'est que les paroles paraissent dérisoires, rien à côté de ce qui s'est passé ce 1er septembre 2013. Nous avons vu les jeunes en vie et puis morts après. Mais le deuxième effet est autre chose, c'est-à-dire nous avons vu dans leurs yeux non seulement le contraire du désespoir, mais un avenir radieux. Nous évoquons ici, nous sommes réunis pour évoquer leur mémoire, pas seulement parce que ce sont les martyrs d'Ashraf, pas seulement parce que ce sont les martyrs de cette grande organisation qu'est l'OMPI, pas seulement parce que ce sont les martyrs du peuple iranien, mais c'est parce que ce sont les martyrs d'une cause commune à nous tous. Et ce serait une très grave erreur. Ce serait une très grave erreur de penser que l'Iran, après tout, c'est loin et que ce qui s'y passe ne nous concerne pas. Alger est plus proche de Washington en ligne droite que de Téhéran. Mais ce qui se passe à Téhéran nous concerne directement, comme si ça se passait à Alger. Pourtant, il est pénible de parler après avoir vu ces images. Ce n'est pas le premier, nous devons travailler à ce que ce soit le dernier. Et il y a beaucoup de travail à faire. Mais si la communauté internationale avait fait quelque chose en 2012, le 1er septembre de 2013 n'aurait pas eu lieu. Et là, je voudrais rappeler, mesdames et messieurs, mes chers frères et sœurs, trois promesses. Trois promesses. Vous savez que le monde et l'humanité ne tient que par un seul concept, c'est le respect de la parole donnée. Sans le respect de la parole donnée, il n'y a pas de vie en commun possible, ni entre les individus, ni entre les peuples, ni entre les nations. L'armée US a reconnu à ces populations le droit de la protection de la 4e Convention de Genève et, en plus de ça, elle s'est engagée à assurer leur protection. La deuxième promesse est venue quelque temps après, de la part de l'Organisation des Nations Unies et toutes les organisations, de l'administration américaine, d'assurer la protection des habitants d'Ashraf, moyennant un déplacement entre Ashraf et le camp Liberty. Est-ce que ces deux promesses ont été tenues? La communauté internationale doit s'engager, et à la tête de la communauté internationale, doit s'engager finalement à respecter sa parole, à respecter la parole donnée. sans quoi il ne peut pas y avoir de paix, ni de stabilité, ni d'ordre dans ce monde, et il ne peut pas y avoir non plus de leadership de quiconque dans ce monde. Et je vous remercie.
I am pleased to read to you a letter from the former Vice President of Iraq, Tariq al-Hashimi, the letter is addressed to President Obama and Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. It reads as follows. On the first anniversary of September 1st, 2013 massacre in Ashraf, we draw your attention to the one most atrocious crimes against humanity in modern history. In this criminal attack, forces under the command of Maliki mass executed 52 members of the MEK, all, quote, protected persons, with their hands tied behind their backs, and abducted 7 others, including 6 women as hostages. The fate of these 7 remains unknown. This enormous crime was carried out under the orders of the Iranian regime, which sees its own survival and the annihilation of the POMI. This criminal behavior vis-à-vis the guests of an Arab nation who have lived in brotherhood and friendship with the Iraqi people for the past 27 years was not and is not tolerable for any noble Iraqi or Arab. The U.S. and the UN had time and again provided written commitments regarding their security and well-being. But unfortunately, 1 year later, neither the United Nations nor the United States government have taken any action to conduct an independent probe in this regard, identify the officials responsible and bring them before justice. Such a step is necessary to prevent such crimes in the future. Reciprocally, the Iraqi government has attempted to fabricate lies and destroy the evidence of the crime, including secretly burying the bodies of the 52 victims in order to cover up the role of the Iraqi government and its senior officials, especially Maliki himself. This is not the only crime against Ashraf and Liberty residents. During the past 6 years, they have been attacked time and again, resulting in a total of 116 residents being killed and over 1,300 others injured, and 20 suffering slow and excruciating deaths as a result of the inhumane medical blockade imposed by the Iraqi government. We once again call on you, as the highest officials responsible for the security and well-being of the Iranian refugees in Ashraf and Liberty, to carry out the necessary measures to conduct an independent probe into the September 1 crime, and referring the perpetrators of this massacre to an international court. This is not only the best sympathy and response to the relatives of the victims, and best guarantee for the security of the 2,800 Iranian refugees currently in Liberty. In fact, it would be the best gift to the Iraqi people, who have again and again been victims of similar crimes by Maliki.